Oh, look! You make the Colossus brush every time you say it's beautiful. Oh, I know! I hate killing them! They're so beautiful! Oh my gosh, am I actually crying? Am I actually crying? Oh my gosh, am I actually crying? Oh my gosh, I'm actually crying. I'm actually crying just based on how beautiful this game is. Oh my gosh. The last game that's ever made me cry was Crisis Core. That ending made me bawl. And this game's making me cry because it's beautiful. I cannot believe I'm crying. Oh god. Oh. I need a moment, guys. First, let me watch this. Let me watch this. That rock physics! I still love it! Okay, I'll be right back. Hey folks, BlackCross here, and welcome to another portion of Deep Dive into Gaming. I've never really thought that I would do another Deep Dive into Gaming involving Shadow of Colossus, but considering the fact that it is technically a different game on its own, regardless of it being a remaster or a remake or whatever, it does count of being a Deep Dive into Gaming. So consider it Shadow of Colossus Part 2 if you want to. But, I'm going to tell you something right now. And that is the fact that I never thought in my entire life that I would love a game more because of updated graphics. I'm going to tell you that right now. I never thought that that would be the case. And it's weird for a number of reasons. Number one being that it was released for the PlayStation 2, so for it to be upscaled from the PlayStation 3, I didn't think was possible. But because of the fact that it was put on the PlayStation 4, they were able to make some groundbreaking stuff that they couldn't do in the PlayStation 2 version when it originally came out. As I've stated, Shadow of Colossus was ahead of its time when it got released for the PlayStation 2. It literally was. Like, the fact that it was able to make such scale into a video game, much less put 16 different Colossus in them, was pretty exponentially crazy. But to see it be redone in this new remake of Shadow of Colossus is just absolutely breathtaking. I literally could not compose myself as to how amazing this was. And like I said during that time, Shadow of Colossus was considered to be literally an art form of its own. Now, it being released on the PlayStation 4, it's no longer just an art form. It's a masterpiece. I don't know what the word to use on this case, but it's far beyond my normal expectations of how they could do it, you know? It's like, you imagined to yourself, okay, well this is going to be the same game, but rebuild for the PlayStation 4 from the ground up. So I mean, what new details could they do? Oh, there were new details that they could add. There were new details. stuff that we didn't really get a good chance to look at. And it's within this new reimagining of how Shadow of Colossus look. And the funny thing is, too, it does everything right, but adds a lot of new features, a lot of new stuff. And because of this new HD quality look, you're given a chance to look at some of the finer details that you don't normally see. You know, when you first play Shadow of Colossus, you're admiring the Colossus itself. Now, in the HD quality, for a number of players who have already played through the previous Shadow of Colossus, they're now paying attention to details that they never thought existed. Because it's like, in the PlayStation 2, there wasn't really a lot of details to pay attention to. You know, it's like, if you try to compare it from PlayStation 2 to the PlayStation 3, there's a little bit of a different gap, but not much in between. Yes, it's a little bit smoother, and you can actually tell the fur texture within the Shadow of Colossus, but not by much. In the PS4 version, however, there's a humongous jump between the two. A humongous jump, an impressive jump for that matter. Yet somehow they managed to stay exactly the same to some degree. I say they stay the same to some degree because while everything is tremendously upscaled, they've added a bunch of stuff to it as well. Now, if you don't want to be spoiled by this at all, you might want to click ahead in the video. I'll be sure to leave it in the description for you guys to click ahead, to which case, go ahead and click now. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and talk about it right now. So, in terms of like what potential things they've added Easter eggs into this one. Now, there were 3 major Easter eggs that they have added that was not in the original Shadow of Colossus. Now, one of them could have been added on to it, but I'm pretty sure one of them was not on it, because technically that game came out way after Shadow of Colossus came out. So naturally, this wasn't in the original. Now, the other one could be, but I don't remember hearing people talking about that. So, they could have been added on to the remake in its discretion. Now, there were 2 major ones. There was an Ico reference and the Last Guardian reference. In the Ico reference, there was a bench that you could see that resembled that of the in-game bench that you could sit down in. So that's there. And then, I haven't played Last Guardian, so I have no idea about it, but there's a potential area which contains a pot, and that is technically known as Trico Treats. Again, I haven't played that game yet, so I don't know as much about it as much as the next person would know, but the fact that they've added in those little Easter eggs is a nice texture to add into it. But then, the biggest thing that they added onto it was these little gold little things, these, what the community calls gold coins, and I've been calling light shards, is technically are known as ascensions. So, the community has finally solved the mystery to it. It has finally solved the mystery to that question as to what they do. And what it does is that there are 79 of them total. As of right now, I'm trying to look for a map, quote-unquote map, to them all. One has not been made yet. Once you find all 79 of them, you have the ability to acquire a weapon. Now, this weapon isn't absolutely mind-blowingly amazing, but it is an interesting thing to attain. Where the sword normally showcases the light in the direction that you're going, this one showcases it in a dark ray. So in other words, instead of it being filled with light, it's going to be a dark blade to show you where the Colossus are at. Now, it does have a significant strength boost, but it sacrifices health regeneration. From what I've been reading, of course. Technically, in terms of, like, what it does in terms of story, or if it adds a new Colossus entirely, it doesn't do any of that, unfortunately. So there's no real reason to go as far as to get it, because technically it's not even a trophy requirement. So at the end of the day, there's really no big thing about it. But I think it did us a favor in terms of why it did it to begin with. And I say it did it for a reason because it gave us a reason to look deeper into the game. It's hard to do a top secret type quest for the gaming community. It really is tough to do that. And so developers tend to try to come up with trick rhymes in order to get our brains thinking. When they see when that happens, they love to admire what the community will do when that is discovered. And I can imagine that their reaction was somewhat the same as any other developer when they add in a secret that people are trying to rack their brains to figure out what it does. They have this little Dumbledore Ganon I forgot his name now all of a sudden. The Wizard from Lord of the Rings. Gandalf, that's right. Gandalf reaction of where they're just laid back and they got that grin face on them. It's like, they're thinking to themselves and they're like, oh, what it's good to have a community for. This is fun to watch. That's my initial reaction to believe, is the fact that they would actually watch to see how far we're willing to go just to uncover a secret. It was actually a little fun, interesting thing because the drive jumped dramatically in terms of like what people were thinking of. It's like all of a sudden the entire community was just trying to break the wall down to discover this secret. It's like, holy shit, there's something new in this game. We gotta figure out what it does. And for like a good 3-4 days, it was actually pretty kept quietly sealed. Until one guy finally decides to break the code and finally finds all the pieces and finally is uncovered the truth. So while it's not mind-blowingly amazing, it is actually a satisfaction because it gave us that drive to look for something. It gave us that extra step to want to go for something. And something like that is hard to do. It's hard to keep that much secret from the main game and introduce it to the world. It's like here's a small little detail. Now go look for them. Wait, you're not going to give us details? Nope, you're on your own. Time to get to work, guys. Like, literally, that's the reaction. It's like, when you get a developer who wants to add in little secrets like that, just for players to figure out, that is something to deprive to. That is something to give players the extra edge for. And while it may not be a significantly major edge, it is something to give players something to look forward to. Keep in mind, Shadow of Colossus already's got a replay value anyway. What with the fact that you would have to play through the multiple difficulty modes of Shadow of Colossus, as well as beat the time trials, as well as to go through the reminiscence modes. So, in terms of what this game does, it adds in a lot of replayability alone just to make it worthwhile. Never mind the fact that these Ascension coins are in Shadow of Colossus anyway. So, on its own, it's literally like the most amazing game anyway in terms of replayability. But in terms of like how the game is overall, I have to say, as much as I hate to admit this, it's going to be nearly impossible for me to play back the PlayStation 3, much less the PlayStation 2 version of the Shadow of Colossus after playing this reimagining. Because I never thought in my entire life that the Colossus, much less the world, will look as beautiful as it does. And I have said that a number of times. I have said that a lot. It is unbelievably crazy. In that it's the one game alone that made me cry because of how beautiful it was. One of my favorite Colossus is actually the 6th Colossus, which is basically the sea serpent Colossus that you fight. I never thought in my entire life that they could upscale the detail of that Colossus. It was absolutely beautiful just to realize of how much detail they added on to the Colossus. It was that moment that I started to cry. I literally started to cry. That was like the most achievable moment that this game could do. Like, if you strike feelings towards a gamer, you've done something. If you make a gamer cry, that does something. That does an impact in terms of how well you've done. You know, you strike emotion into a player, which is hard to do nowadays, you know, now that we have the whole 4K Ultra HD resolution thing. It's hard to do that now, you know, it's really hard and it's nearly impossible to do that. But with these remakes, these reimaginings of the game, you know, it's a double-sided effect for players. It can either work for or against them. By working against, it can sometimes be a negative feedback, and sometimes it hurts a player. Now, it can work for the player, and it could be done in a beautiful way that the player never thought it could be done. You know, if you can do it in a way that has the player, like, in awe, and just realize that this was a thing that could be done, it can be absolutely mind-blowing. It can be absolutely breathtaking to make this happen. Keep in mind, Shadow of Colossus was already a masterpiece and ahead of its time when it came out for the PlayStation 2. So it coming out for the PlayStation 4 in this amazingly rebuilt version is just absolutely mind-blowing. I literally gushed about this game. And I played through the entire 8.5 hours of just playing this game. Just taking in the entire world. And I haven't done that since, like, I think the last time I took in the world as a whole, like literally absorb myself into the world, was probably that of Dark Souls. Keep in mind, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, and Bloodborne, I did kind of feel it, but I didn't get myself absorbed into it like I did in Dark Souls. And that's why Dark Souls kind of took a whole impact of me and made it into my list of favorite games of all times. Shadow of the Colossus does have an impact, but not as much as what the PlayStation 4 version has done. It has done that much. And that is what you need to do, is that you need to pull gamers in to the world. You can't just make a good game, you have to pull them in. And if you're passionate about making the game, and if you actually successfully pull them in, then you've done your job. This signifies how well of a game has done. And for a game that came out years ago for the PlayStation 2, and for it to come out for the PlayStation 4, and it's drive this much criticism, and by criticism, I mean positive criticism. Credits, reviewers are giving it high remarks as probably one of the best remakes and re-releases out there. This is absolutely amazing. So to the people who worked on this one, thank you so much for doing just an amazing job. I know it couldn't have been easy to do this. I'm sure some of you were scared of how people would react of a re-release for Shadow of Colossus, but you were passionate enough to stick to it and create it into a more experience than anything before. So, in my personal opinion, I think Shadow of Colossus deserves every credit it deserves. It literally deserves that much. And if you've not played it, you should definitely do yourself a favor and pick it up. It's well worth it. It really is. But if there was anything that I wanted, which was, a lot of people know what that is, would be to add in another batch of Colossus. I wanted that so badly. But at the same time, I think it's probably for the best that we never get that. Because even the developers, when they first came out for the PlayStation 2, they said that at the time that they came up with those Colossus, they didn't know how to go about you fighting that Colossus, or they were too difficult to program into the game. So at the end of the day, I don't think it being a bad thing that we didn't get more Colossus. They may have wanted to at some point, but they were looking at it and they were like, this would be a lot more difficult if we actually attempted this, so we better not. Although if they somehow come out within the next couple of months saying, hey, here's a free DLC for a new Colossus that you can fight, in which case, I'm going for it. I'm going for it. I don't care how difficult it gets. I want to go for that Colossus. That's going to be freaking awesome. But at any rate, though, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about the new Shadow Colossus. Do you think it's just as amazing as I think it is? Do you think it's just as beautiful as what I was thinking it is? Or was your experience entirely different, you know? Just let me know in the comments below. But I'll see you in the next video. This is BlackCross signing off. Take care, guys.